Hey there YouTube, this is SJM436 back with another video. This time, so I've been buying old Game Boy Pockets and whatnot, and I keep an eye on them from once in a while to see if there are any like nice limited edition ones on sale, broken as is, so I can fix them up. A couple months ago I got this guy, which is a clear Game Boy Pocket, and the only thing that ended up being wrong was I believe the speaker had to be replaced and the power switch was a little flaky, but I fixed it up and it works perfectly fine now. So I was on eBay the other day, as evidenced by the eBay sticker, and I found another Game Boy Pocket for pretty cheap. Well, pretty cheap given for what it is. And I already have one of these, so I'll probably end up either selling this one or the other one, depending on which one's in better condition. There we go. So it is a ice blue Game Boy Pocket, and these were limited edition. I believe they were from Toys R Us, maybe, in the US. I remember seeing ads for these, and when I was a kid, I always wanted one, but I wasn't able to get one. I did get a pretty cheap one years and years ago for like 20 bucks, but it was pretty scratched up, and someone scratched their name, I believe, into the back here. This one's in pretty good condition, actually. Wow. They had a couple blurry pics listed on the sales page, but I couldn't really tell quite what the condition was. But yeah, luckily it does come with the battery door and everything, and it seems to be in pretty good condition. There are some scratches. This is a painted console, so it's gonna, like the silver one as well, it's basically a the background color of the plastic itself is a little bit duller, and then it's spray painted on with the actual metallic color. So these do scratch up if you use them. Buttons feel okay, but I always have to do this test as soon as I get a Game Boy Pocket, even if it's sold as broken, just to see if the seller didn't do something stupid and, for instance, not change the contrast. And because I believe this listing for this one said they turned it on and they saw nothing on the screen, which could mean absolutely nothing, or it could be a power problem. Let's just see if it turns on. Interesting. That is interesting. So it does actually, the power LED comes on, but there truly is nothing on the screen, and I was flicking that contrast wheel back and forth. Let's turn up the volume and see if it makes any sound. Very interesting. That's really odd. So let's get the screwdriver and see what it looks like inside. And I'm almost wondering if the, well, I mean, if the CPU were fully working, you should at least hear the audio for the game, which clearly is not fully working. So I wonder if there's some problem with the power regulator, or the bias or the bias to the LCD, in which case, if there's no bias voltage, you wouldn't see, that would be like the negative 19 volts. You wouldn't see anything on the screen. But anyway, let's pop this guy open and see what we're dealing with. In case I hadn't mentioned, I believe I got this guy for 25 bucks or 30 bucks maybe, which isn't actually very cheap if you think about it for a Game Boy Pocket in general. But for one of these limited edition consoles that are getting kind of rare to find, that's a pretty decent price, I would say. And I could easily make my money back if I can get this working 100%. So I'm not too worried about that. Though this one looks in much nicer condition than the one that I already have. So if anything, I would likely keep this one and sell the other one. Okay, so I've done this a million times. Let's see. It's a little bit dusty inside. Yeah, there's some kind of dead bug in there. That's great. So yeah, that's a good sign no one's been in here to clean, at least. Let's just pull out this LCD. Good thing is, it looks like no one's been in here before. Looks like we're the first one. Well, no human. There was that insect, dead insect in the speaker there, unfortunately. Of which I will definitely be washing my hands very thoroughly after this. pull this out. Just take a look at the contacts on the LCD ribbon. Look a little bit, something's up. So I might give that a flush with some isopropyl. Doesn't look like there's any like liquid damage or anything like that. You can see some flux from when it was soldered at the factory, but that should be fine. But yeah, I'm definitely going to give these a clean, and let's try just powering up without the LCD attached. Maybe there's something wrong with the LCD that's keeping the system from booting. Okay, so I've got the multimeter, and we're just going to measure some voltages. I have a feeling there's something up with the DC-DC converter the more I look at it. So just power this on. So when it's off, if we measure across the battery contacts, we get 2.71 volts. When we turn it on, it drops a little bit, but not anything appreciably. Now if I look at VCC, which should be 5 volts, I'm getting 2.66. That's not right. So we're not even getting 5 volts out of this DC-DC converter, which means so this LED is basically hooked up directly with the battery. So this doesn't necessarily mean that the system's fully working if that comes on. So I'm expecting both 5 volts and negative 19 volts out of this module here. This is the DC-DC converter. It takes 3 volts from the battery, and when you flip the power switch, it should output both 5 volts and negative 19 volts. And as I saw on VCC, which is supposed to be 5 volts, it's your logic rail for the processor, we were getting 2.5 volts. That's way too low. The lowest I should expect to see that is like 4.5, 4.75 volts, something like that. But never that low. So obviously this guy is not performing correctly. So if I go ahead and measure the rest of the voltages, yeah, I can see this should be 5 volts, 2.67. This is probably ground. Here is 5.19. This is what I should be expecting to see, like VCC at 5 point something volts. Here's negative 17, so that is close. That's probably your LCD bias. And this is probably another ground point. So that's really weird that I'm not seeing 5 volts on that rail. Let me probe around a little bit. So maybe this module is okay. That negative 17 and that 5 volts looked okay. Okay, so more interesting measurements. I put this on resistance, low resistance, so 200 ohm range, and we're just going to measure. So that's really odd that on, if you look very closely, there's labeling. It says VDD, VEE, ground. So VEE was minus 17, that's okay. VDD was like 5.2, that's okay. However, our VCC, which is pin 1 here, was 2.3 volts. It should be closer to 5. So what I'm wondering is something downstream of this power converter is shorting. And so if I set this on resistance and I measured between ground and VCC, you'll notice it's 75 ohms. That should be a couple thousand, not 75. So definitely one of the components failed. I'm guessing downstream. We can try it without a cart just to make absolute sure that it's not anything that we are doing, but I'm pretty sure that, yep, there you go, something failed. One of the chips on the 5 volt rail is dead. Unfortunately, that would be difficult to find. It could be any of these small glue logic chips. What you would have to do is use a much better multimeter than I have that has very low resistance measurements, and check these supply rails and all these caps. It could be a capacitor as well, like a decoupling cap. Measure all of them and then find where the lowest resistance is, and that's where it's the fault is locally located, around there. Unfortunately, for something like this, I mean, I'll keep this board, and I probably will eventually do that once I go back to the lab. We have better equipment there than I have at home here. But to get this guy up and running quickly, it's actually just easier, ironically enough, just to swap out the entire board. I believe I actually do have a Game Boy Pocket that works, but that has a dead DC-DC, so I could actually just desolder this and swap them, or just grab another pocket that's not as rare and just swap the entire board at once. But I'm guessing, don't know what exactly would cause a failure. Could be stress related, like these type of ceramic caps, if they're flexed, they can actually fail short. Pretty sure now that the LCD works and everything else works, other than some component on the 5-volt rail happened to fail. Okay, so I've desoldered just about everything I could power supply wise on this board, which was the original one that came in this shell, and it's not anything easy. It's going to be something in the digital logic side, which will be a pain to find. So I had this Game Boy, which is a really dirty, it was this atomic purple Japanese console that I bought, and it had quite a number of issues. The DC-DC board was dead. The power switch was intermittent to the point where you actually had to press it down and while you slid it for it to actually make contact. And there appeared to be some soda damage and whatnot. Someone spilled some kind of sticky drink. So what I ended up doing was I desoldered from this guy the DC-DC board. I added it to this guy, swapped this one out. I desoldered the power switch from this board, which was nice and firm, and I added it to this one. I swapped out the old broken one that you had to press on, and I cleaned everything up, and we can see it turns on. It dings, and if I were to short one of the buttons, the card is in there, right? There we go. So the game started up, basically. Also, another thing I forgot was the speaker on this I had pulled to actually this speaker is in here now. So I needed a new speaker because the old one was less than desired. I think actually this one is broken. It was just clean broken. It would make no sound. So I took the speaker from this guy, which was in here, and swapped it over as well. So now this board fully works as far as I can tell, but I haven't actually tried the LCD. So that'll be one last test. Let's just assemble this now, and hopefully we get an image. I'm pretty sure we will, but Murphy will get you always, so let's just test to make sure. So before we actually go through the process of screwing everything together, let's just see if the LCD works before we and there we go. Screen full on black. No dead lines, no dead pixels. Turn that volume down. And just see if most of the buttons work. Yeah, start, select work. A, B work. Up, down, left, right work. Yeah, this is fully working. Looks like the screen has some smudge marks. I'll clean that off with some isopropyl. But luckily it looks like it's just on the surface. It's not actually scratches. So yeah, this fully works. So let's just get this back together and fully cleaned up. And we can button this guy up now. So yeah, I'm going to call this one a success, even though I kind of cheated. I ended up using another broken Game Boy Pocket to fix it. I'll keep this board. There are probably still good parts on it, but you know, I'm going to have to actually go through this deeper with equipment I do not have at home with me right now to try and figure out what chip specifically failed. It's nothing trivial like I was hoping for. It's something that's powered off of that 5-volt rail that I don't know why it would have failed, but it failed to short, so that's all the current's going through there. If you had a one of those thermal imaging cameras, it would be pretty easy, actually. I might actually, instead of that, just power this up on a bench supply and then put my finger to each of the chips to see which one is getting warmer than all the others. That's most likely the one that failed then. But anyway, this is still good as a parts board. It's just unfortunate that there's something failed on it that's, not immediately obvious. But overall, pretty happy. I believe this guy was like $30, somewhere around that. Label's nice and good condition. Unfortunately, does not have the actual serial number or anything. Actually, a lot of them that I have are missing that serial number, interestingly enough. But yeah, works perfectly fine. Now I have myself a nice shiny ice blue Game Boy Pocket. I have another one of these that's in much worse condition. I think I'm going to go ahead and sell that one, but keep this one because this one is in so much better condition. So yeah, absolutely beautiful. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Sorry that it wasn't anything more interesting of a fix other than just swapping out a lot of parts. I did kind of want to show you the desoldering process and soldering process, but it was kind of nerve-wracking. I had to turn up the iron to 800 Fahrenheit, which is actually really high. You should never have to do that. But some of these parts, to desolder them, especially the power switch, you have to be quick, and you have to heat it up very hot. Get in there, get it out within like 30 seconds. Otherwise, you risk delaminating and destroying the switch as well, delaminating the board. And so that was one of the things you have to be really quick about. So it's not something I can faff about with, the camera on. I've done a speaker desoldering, tutorial for this guy, so I don't think you guys need to see that again. The only thing is, maybe next time I have to remove one of these DC-DC boards. There's a trick to doing it pretty easily. And maybe I'll show that next time. Basically, you get tweezers and you lever it, you put your iron on pretty hot, like 700, 750 Fahrenheit, and then you alternate to get the side with two legs off, and using the tweezers as a lever, you can pull that half off so that's hanging kind of diagonally, and then you do the same thing on the other side, and kind of wiggle the board until all pins come free. And then to clear the holes to solder a new one in, you heat it up with the iron while using like a thin either tweezers or like a needle, and you can actually force, while the solder is molten, you can push that into the hole and then let it cool around your tweezers, and then you just remove your tweezers, and then you have a nice hole that you can push the lead back through to solder, because normally when you desolder these, they fill up with solder again, so you can't push anything through, unfortunately. That's just a quick tip. I'll probably show that in a future video though. I just didn't really want to mess around with that on camera right now. Anyway, yeah, I rambled on for long enough. Now I have another beautiful limited edition Game Boy in my collection. Anyway, I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.